You have to excuse me because I'm reading from a script. My name is Keith Carlock from Owensboro, Kentucky. A little background. My obsession for the past 24 years has been my theories in invisibility and holodeck-like technologies, only their visual aspects. The scientific term for invisibility is adaptive camouflage, and the scientific term for a holodeck-like technology is called virtual immersion. I've had my theories in their final form since the New Year winter of 1992, about 24 years now. My work has never been given a fair shake in this town for the past 20-something years, so that is why I had to resort to public access to have my theories investigated by a local audience and to request an honest critique by a respected local expert for an informed viewership to see if my claims stand up to public scrutiny without having to privately consult a professor who would, as always in the past, dismiss my claims out of hand due to academic egotism. No one has really given me a chance to explain my ideas and just to dismiss them out of hand without even looking at my proofs. But I will show you two recent inventions, the Rochester cloak and the so-called lenticular curtain, that are very similar to my own ideas of my light interface and the lenticular box that I have had for 24 years now. You can look for these things for yourself online. I hope you will bear with me and try to understand my proofs of my work and my comparison of my work with the works of others, the Rochester cloak and the lenticular curtain. How I came up with my ideas. This series of poster boards were my displays in an art presentation back in 1998. There was a first poster board, but it is too damaged to be of any use in this presentation. But it was a diagram of a person with a TV in front of him or her and a camera behind to project the background in front of the person to create a very simple state of invisibility. This is the second board. The second board shows a two-sided monocular. That was this. It shows a two-sided monocular 2D view having two camera units, TV camera units, displaying the background back and front of the environment around the person. Those are two small TV camera units in front and behind a person. This third board shows TV camera units surrounding the individual, this time seen from above, in a faceted, multi-view TV camera display, which was a critical vision of making something invisible from all angles. The next display board illustrates the same TV camera units but without the person inside, and showing the web of wiring to each TV camera unit instead. This shows a house and a tree and a fence in the background being brought through at different angles of this contraption, this device or whatever. The light interface is simply the The last board shows my first concept of a light interface. transmitting images from the outer 3D camera units to the inner units and back out of the opposing TV camera units on the opposite sides. That's a light interface, and if you can see the wiring, that's how they transmit. The light interface is simply the concentrated shape volume of the space that a solid geometric object is resting in connected to the outside surface of the invisible object to conceal a person or object in between the interior light interface and the outside 3D pixel surface. Some time ago, someone sent me a diagram of what it would take to make an object invisible. This is depicted in the top portion of this diagram. They instinctively knew that an invisible object would require some sort of 3D pixels, and that light coming in at an angle from one side of the object must come out at the other side at the same angle, but didn't know how to achieve this. I sent them the diagram pictured below of my light interface concept. In this depiction, the multifaceted TV camera units of the previous display has now been refined down to the sending receiving 3D pixels on the outer surface of the invisible object. In this case, an aircraft, through the light interface within and back out of the 3D pixels on the opposite side of the craft. The light interface is simply a concentration of the space that the object is resting in. This next diagram shows the three-dimensional perspective of the light interface inside a craft, connected to the outer surface 3D pixels with fiber optic bundles and my concept of a 3D pixel unit. Again, the light interface takes the same shape as the object being made invisible. The next diagram is an object with moving parts, such as the appendages of this hypothetical invisible battlesuit. My light interface would be required to send light through an object with moving parts, because if the fiber optics wires were hardwired, you'd have to alter each connection even if the appendages moved by a small amount. With the puppet interface inside the suit moving, instead light intersects within the interface in a free-floating web of light as the suit moves, allowing for changes to the paths of light through the suit. A real invisible cloak would be rigid like a suit of armor, not a Harry Potter flimsy fabric cloak, in order to maintain the paths of light in and out of the invisible battlesuit. The next two diagrams show how to send light through an object both with and without my concept of the light interface. The first diagram shows a hard wiring of fiber optic wire from one 3D pixel to all the rest, in what I call one-to-many correspondence of inner and outer 3D pixels without my light interface concept. This diagram only shows one node of connection. The next diagram shows what I call one-to-one correspondence with a fiber optic bundle instead of single wires connecting the outer 3D pixels to their counterpart 3D pixels on the surface of the light interface within. This too only shows one node of connection. The inner square is the light interface, again taking the same shape as the object being made invisible. This diagram is a cross-section of a three-dimensional pixelated sphere, which is the highest form of 3D invisible holodeck resolution of a solid geometric object, because light travels through it at regular intervals. Any other shape would have less fully wraparound or interior 3D resolution, but which could be increased by adding more to the fiber optic bundles in between the inner and outer 3D pixels. Also, Also, this diagram shows a person existing in a sort of holodeck inside the interface of the outside environment, painted all along the interior walls of the interface as light is being sent through the object to make it invisible. The holodeck converted light interface is the byproduct that I discovered of sending light through an object to make it invisible. This is my great discovery. Invisibility, adaptive camouflage, and holodeck virtual immersion technologies are exact geometric inverse forms of each other. Invisibility, holodeck, and holodeck technologies, their visual aspects are inversely related to each other. If you turn an invisible object outside in, you'd have a holodeck. If you turned a holodeck inside out, you'd have an invisible object. The last diagram showed a person inside the light interface seeing a holodeck scenery of the outside environment as the light was being sent through to make the object invisible. But also, in the same token, the same person would be magnified to the outside world on the three-dimensional pixelated surface of a hypothetical invisible sphere, or any shape for that matter, illuminated from the light outside. A good way to combine both invisibility and holodeck technologies would be to have two light interfaces, one to send light through the outer surface of the object to make you invisible inside, while another interface is connected to a pre-recording of a random outside environment or a computer-programmed holodeck scenery. I call my idea an APRO, or an artificial parallel reality orb. It's so simple I don't know why the Star Trek writers never thought of this device using the Star Trek universe's already existing Klingon cloaking device wrapped around a Star Trek The Next Generation holodeck. Again, invisibility and holodeck technologies share an interesting inverse relationship to each other to create this device. My next diagram is an illustration of a paradox of more than one APROs existing in this reality. I call it the paradox of ghost interfacing. The philosophy behind an ideal perfect APRO, invisible to both light and matter in this world, is that it must be completely invisible to the outside world while being able to detect and manipulate the matter and energy of the world beyond itself. Now, if two perfect ideal APROs existed, how would they interact? If they can detect each other, they are breaking rule 1. They must be completely invisible to anything beyond itself in the outside world. If they can't detect each other, they are breaking rule 2. They must be able to detect and manipulate everything in the outside world. This is the paradox of ghost interfacing that extends into the virtual environments of the holodeck converted light interfaces as well, but I'll end this topic here. The next diagram I don't really discuss very much because I'm not quite sure of its actual operation. But I believe that you can create a solid hologram of someone or something existing within the light interface, and not just a three-dimensional depiction of the outside environment along the interior walls. It also introduces the concept of telepresence in between different holodecks, another idea that the Star Trek writers never picked up on. The next diagram is just one of my many investigations into the 3D pixelization of solid geometric shapes, in this case a simple sphere packing of basic spheres around a central point. This last diagram shows my idea for a 3D pixel unit that works in conjunction with the light interface to make invisibility and holodeck technologies possible. This 3D pixel is capable of taking light in at one angle and sending it through its counterpart smaller 3D pixel on the surface of the light interface and coming back out at the same angle that it went in at. This is crucial for sending light through an object to make it invisible. The Rochester cloak. The Rochester cloak. The most recent innovation in invisibility in the vein of research that I'm putting my money on is the Rochester cloak. You can Google Rochester cloak and see for yourself how it works, but these illustrations give a good description. Notice how much Notice how much these diagrams are similar to my light interface. They both have 3D lenticular pixels both on the front and back of a concealed object, but it sends its light through by means of a computer program, while my light interface uses the natural form of a concentrated shaped volume of space in the form of a 3D pixelated structure, the light interface, to send light through an object, making it invisible. And here's the light going through. And the byproduct of sending light through my light interface is the holodeck of the outside environment as light is being sent through, making an object invisible. Also, my light interface makes it possible to send light through an object with moving parts, like the appendages of an invisible battlesuit. The Rochester cloak is not that advanced yet, but it's the closest form to my research into invisibility. Here's the lenticular box. My lenticular box is a low-tech geometric visual proof of the inverse relationship between invisibility and holodeck technologies that can be applied to a high-tech scenario. I invented the lenticular box around the same time as I had my discoveries a few years later, on a dare from a friend who dared me to make something invisible, and then he had listened to me talk about my high-tech notions. I came up with my high-tech applications before I made the low-tech lenticular box to prove it. The first diagram shows how to take pictures in the desired environment to be added together to create the lenticular box. First, you have to imagine something like a thin frame of the box's outline against the backdrop of the environment that you want to take the pictures in, but the location of the imaginary box in the space must remain stationary to the angles of view that you take your pictures from. First, you decide if you want a straight-on view or an edge-on view. A straight-on view would be the picture that you paste on the box as a flat backing to where the edge-on views are placed. You stand at one point around a point and rotate around, taking one picture for a straight-on view, and rotate some more and take two side-by-side edge-on views. Then you just keep repeating, not only for the 12 horizontal angle pictures, actual pictures, splice view panorama, but also for the two vertical axes of view perpendicular to the horizontal axis. Then you develop the photographs and lay the images down in their unfolded state to keep track of the positioning of each picture that goes around the box. There is 30 square measured photographs, but only 18 different viewing angles, since two side-by-side images come together at an edge-on view with 6 straight-on flat backing photographs left over. Then, remembering their place, you cut lengths of photographs with slots halfway through them in order to splice into a crosswise series of photographic strips in the shape of a grid and glue it to the straight on flat backings that make up the basic box. This diagram shows the inverse relationship between invisibility and holodeck technologies on a low-tech scale. An exterior splice view panorama is a low-tech invisible effect because you would have to match it up to the background in which the pictures were taken and walk around the box at a certain circumference away with one eye closed in order to see the box blend into the background. An exterior splice view panorama and an interior splice view panorama is a low-tech holodeck using the same images that made the invisible effect on the outside to produce a low-tech holodeck-like scenery of the same environment on the interior of the box. I've never made a low-tech interior holodeck box, only the low-tech invisible aspect. But this shows how to invert them from one to the other. You pull the panels through their opposing panels position without turning them around, and simply switch the lenticular light colored louvers of the two adjacent panels at all corners of the interior of the lenticular box to make a low-tech holodeck. And this is what I'm trying to do right now, making an exterior and interior splice view panorama. Okay, this is called the lenticular curtain that I found online recently, and it looks a lot like my lenticular box, but I'll read from the script. I am firmly convinced that this so-called lenticular curtain is a rip-off of my lenticular box. Somebody must have seen my own box, which I've had fully constructed since 2008, though I've conceived of it much earlier, and made their own cheap knockoff, calling their piece of crap lenticular curtains. They had to have stolen my idea. My lenticular box is not truly lenticular. I'm the only one who would call it that. Lenticular technology describes lenticules, which are long cylindrical lenses, the kind that are small that you can feel them as you scratch a lenticular hologram card. This is a lenticular curtain. Well, if you visit their website by googling lenticular curtain, you can see for yourself that it is a cheap, not even lenticular wraparound mural cut into strips of a curtain. True, they may show an interior and exterior panorama, but they don't know how to create a truly lenticular box with an exact geometric construction and all three axes or dimensions of rotation. And they don't know how this applies to the invisibility and holodeck technologies in a high-tech scenario. Okay, I'm finished with that. Well, here's the letter that I wrote to them, and it reads to studio@branchplant.com. My name is Keith Carlock. I'm from Owensboro, Kentucky. I've had something very similar to your lenticular curtain, quote unquote, since 1998, and I put 4 pictures of my lenticular box in the email, and also a picture of this diagram to show how it's really done, how you invert from low-tech invisibility to low-tech holodeck. And this is their lenticular curtain is what they call it, and right there is my lenticular box. Okay, here's the last part. My invisible holographic principle. One last thing which may seem too strange to consider is that there is a cosmological principle called the holographic principle of black holes that says that information of anything that falls into a black hole is also written on its 2D holographic boundary of the event horizon. This idea is extended to the universe and supposes that our universe is actually two-dimensional, existing on the boundary of our infinitely far cosmic horizon, and we are the holographic forms of this two-dimensional information in an illusion of a 3D holographic universe. I've been trying my basic practical down-to-earth off-the-shelf technology theory of invisibility holodecks show that they are exact geometric inverse forms of each other. I've been trying to apply my discoveries to something of a cosmic significance almost for as long as I've had my discoveries, and recently made a sort of breakthrough by considering holograms as just one side of a coin. Invisibility and holodeck technologies, an invisible universe and a holographic universe. Invisible and holodeck technologies, according to my discoveries, are both inverse forms of each other. I made my breakthrough on August 24, 2014 while sitting on the loading dock at my friend's girlfriend's place of business while she was tending to things inside. I had my pencil and papers with me and came up with the beginnings of my proposed amended invisible holographic principle of black holes extended to the universe. Invisibility is the inverse form of holography. I'm still working on this idea, but it goes to show that my ideas are not simply techno-gadgetry. They may actually have something important to say about our reality. And these are the books that I'm trying to connect my theories to. And The Invisible Universe, Leonard Susskind's A Holographic Universe, and this is a book about the battle with Stephen Hawking over the information paradox that developed into the holographic principle. But remember to look up both the Rochester cloak and the lenticular curtain, and then ask yourself why that the Messenger Enquirer has been saying for all these 20 years since 1996 that my work is not newsworthy when there is plenty of news about other cases of my concepts. Also, look up the holographic principle if it interests you, and you might see how my work could relate. Thank you for watching, and please check out my Facebook group titled Invisibility, Adaptive Camouflage, and Holodeck Virtual Immersion Theory. I get mad and rant and post off topics sometimes, or probably a lot anymore. But I'll be more than willing to answer any questions you may have about my work. Please read the About section before you decide to join. Again, thanks for your time. Goodbye. And these are my images. And this is probably a better this is the lenticular box, or it's a lenticular curtain online that I found recently, and it looks a lot like my lenticular box that I've had since I've had my low-tech and high-tech, or my high-tech applications theories. It's just a bunch of strips of curtain that it's just a wraparound canvas. They're not spliced into each other to create a three-dimensional effect. And it's just, here's different pictures of it. And these are just, they have some, I don't know if it's on, yeah, here's some. They show an interior, like you can turn a canvas inside out, which is easy, but you can't turn a 3-axis canvas inside out that easy. My lenticular box, it's not that easy to convert it into a holodeck and an exterior image. That's just strips of curtain It's not really put together in any way. I believe these people stole this idea off of me. It's just walking inside of a canvas, a fully wraparound mural. And this is how you would really convert from an exterior invisible or outside panorama to an inside panorama. This is my lenticular box. It could be improved, but you can see one image folding into another. This is just the horizontal axis going around the box. Maybe I should back up. That's of the old river, the old Smothers Park, around 2008. It was November 2008 when I took these pictures, I think. Or at least it's as old as how old the old park was before they tore it down. But this is just a horizontal axis, and there's two vertical axes perpendicular to the horizontal axis. And at one level you can look up and see the sky, and at another level you can look down and see the ground, and at this horizontal level you can see images fading into each other. And these are this lenticular box, and the diagrams that explain it are based on the inverse relationship between invisibility and holodeck technology that I discovered a long time ago. How you can turn a invisible object into a holodeck. And this is a holodeck. This is an APRO, an artificial parallel reality orb. And one side is a light interface that connects to the sphere, the invisible sphere. The other side is a holodeck connected, computer connected, converted holodeck light interface. And well, I guess this is all I have to say. Here's all my stuff. I hope I explained all my ideas right. I hope you understand my ideas. And oh, here's the Rochester cloak that looks really similar to my ideas. Well, it quit. It stopped on me. So, well, thanks a lot.